Hi, I'm Greg with Alchem's Razors, and today we're going to talk about Pascal's wager. Now, Pascal was a French philosopher, and among many of his works, he came up with Pascal's wager. Now, Pascal says that sometime in your life, you have to actually make a big decision, whether or not you believe in God. Sometime after you're born, before you die, you have to make that decision. Now, if you believe in God, then there's certain ways that you live, and if you don't, then there's also certain ways that you would live. And if you're in the middle, if you're riding the fence on it and you don't believe, then you have by default actually made that decision in not believing. Now, let's break down to actually what Pascal's wager says, and then I'm going to break it down further because it takes a little bit of explaining. It says, even though the existence of God cannot be determined through reason, a person should wager as if though God exists, because so living has everything to gain and nothing to lose. So let's break that down. First, let's assume there is not a God, okay? So if there's not a God, and you believe in God, and you live the way that He says that you should live, well, when you die, you don't lose anything. You just simply die. In addition, if there is not a God, and you choose not to believe in Him, then when you die, well, you also don't lose anything, you don't gain anything, nothing happens after you die. Now, the tricky part comes if there is a God. Now, if there is a God and you believe in Him and you live the way that He says that you should live, then at the time of your death, then you get to go to heaven and you win. If there is a God and you do not believe, then at the time of your death, then you don't get to go to heaven. You go to hell or purgatory or whatever afterlife is applicable. Now, it has a couple problems in there which I'm going to get to. First off, with the argument itself, it is an argument not to convince someone of the existence of God, and that's important. It is an argument over how you should live while you're on the earth. The problem with that is that even though it says that's what it is, believing in God is an important stage, an important part of how you should live your life. So you could live your life, do everything like you're supposed to, but in the end, if you didn't believe, if you didn't actually commit, then it actually says, I believe in Matthew, in the 7th chapter, that you don't win anyway. So that I have a problem with. I also have a problem with the idea that if you don't believe and you don't follow a Bible's way of teaching of how to live, then that means that you're living an immoral life and a bad life. I live a great life. I live a very moral life, and I don't use the Bible to tell me how to do that. But with the argument itself, there's also a couple bigger problems, okay? And these are universal. First off, it assumes that the God that you are believing in is the right one. Now, throughout history, there's been many gods. It truly depends on where you are on the planet Earth and when you were born over which God that you happen to believe in at the time. There were times where people were absolutely committed to many gods. For Zeus, there are times like currently now when people can choose God of the Bible. Or if you're living in the Middle East, let's say, or Northern Africa, Morocco, any area like that, more than likely you're going to follow Islam and you're going to believe in Allah and the Prophet Muhammad. All of this assumes that you are picking the right God to follow. Pascal applied this to the Holy Bible and to the God of Christianity. But if that's wrong, if you've picked the wrong God to put your bet on, well, then you didn't live by the true God's rules and didn't believe in Him, and you lose. So it kind of falls into a situation where to have the safest bet possible, you would actually need to believe in every God and follow every God's laws, every God's rules, which is of course impossible, and it just can't be done. Now, next up, it makes an assumption that you can will believe. Now, you believe or you do not believe. If you go to church every day and you do everything like you're supposed to, but in the end, that switch doesn't flip. You don't get that switch and actually come over to an emotional belief, then you never believed. And like I said before, because belief is an important part of living, living the way that you're supposed to, then the two don't coexist. You you can't force yourself to believe in anything, which is a criteria for the Christian belief. It also makes an assumption, and this one I always find humorous whenever someone's trying to explain this to me or trying to convince me with Pascal's wager, is that God doesn't know exactly what they're doing. God doesn't know exactly that you're watching this now. If there is a God, then He doesn't understand that people are just simply covering their butts. I mean, that's kind of ludicrous to me. It really is. Excuse me. It says that God doesn't know that you are simply covering your ass and that you don't believe and that He doesn't understand exactly what's going on. Again, see Matthew chapter 7. Now, the last part, the part that I have a really personal problem with Pascal's wager is this. It makes the assumption that you don't lose anything by believing. And you do. You really do. Everyone has a time when they were born and a time when they die. You have lots of minutes, seconds, days, years, decades in between those two dates. Every minute, every day that you spend believing and doing things to support a religion, it's also time that you've spent not doing something that you could do to enrich your own life. I'll give you an example. If a family loads up and goes to church on Sunday morning, that's about 2 hours, maybe a little bit more, depending on the church services. I know many last a lot longer. But in addition to that time, there's also time throughout the week where they're going to fellowship, they're doing things, visitation, like we did in my church. But that's time that you don't get back. There's no time that you've already spent doing anything that you get back, that you get to redo. So the idea that you lose nothing is really ludicrous to me, because on a Sunday morning, when that family loads up and goes to a church and you sit through a service and then you come home, that's time you could have spent going and having a family breakfast, or going to a movie matinee, or crack open a book, or watching a good movie. It's whatever you want to do to enrich your life. That span of time is now lost for contributing to a religion itself. Now, there are many other arguments and many other reasons why Pascal's wager doesn't hold. Grab a philosophy professor or a philosophy student. I'm sure they can go into a lot more detail. I certainly could, but I'm trying to keep these fairly short. Like I've always said, and I'll say for every video, for more information about it, simply go on the web or get a library card and do your own research. Also, feel free to come up and talk to us at meetings, ask questions, email, letters, telephone calls, whatever. We'll be more than happy to talk to you about any of these. Anyway, that's the end of this chapter for Pascal's wager. Thanks much. Have a great day.